over some of your quizzes. I'm just going to explain what type of questions you can expect to see on the quizzes. I'm not going to actually review for the quiz. That's up to you to study the chapter and make sure you understand the important concepts from each unit. And I'm going to go over some of the more difficult music theory drills that students tend to have a lot of trouble with. So for the quizzes, basically, if I open up the Unit 1 drills and quizzes, you're going to be drilled in Unit 1 on the different types of musicians. There's only 2 chapters in the introduction in Unit 1, but for Unit 1 that actually includes information from the introduction. So make sure you understand what a composer is, what an educator is, what a theorist is. Make sure you understand what these various people do. And that's going to be the same for all of your quizzes. They're all going to deal with the concepts from the unit. Now, there is no time limit on the drills, on the quizzes. So you can, I'm just going to open this up and you'll see the first question from the first quiz. But that's okay, I want to show you how this works. So when you open up a quiz, they're usually about 15 or 16 questions long. You can suspend your attempts as many times as you need to before the deadline for the quiz. So you can use your textbook. This is open book, so there's no reason to not do well on these quizzes. Take your time, find the right answer, make sure you understand the concepts in the unit. Now the music theory drills. These are designed to reinforce your understanding of theory. So here, keyboard note identification. Let's go ahead and close my attempt here. I'm going to go through each one of the theory drills for you because those are actually a little bit harder than the quizzes. Quizzes are fairly straightforward, like anything you'd have in any other college course. So for music theory drill number 1, you can click on the instructions. This one tests your ability to identify all of the white keys on the piano. You don't have to identify the black keys at this point. So this says identify key number 10 on the piano keyboard, and everybody's going to have a different test for this. Every time you take this, it will be a new set of questions, but they'll all be very similar. They'll all ask about the keys on the keyboard. So in this instance, it's number 10. I find number 10 on the keyboard. It's right here. If you remember, I said that to the left of the double set of black keys is always the note C. To the left of the double set, or the triple set of black keys, is the note F. So this is an F, this is an F right here, this is an F, that's a C, that's a C, and that's a C, because they're all either to the left of the double set or the triple set. So knowing that, I need to identify key number 10. So I know that key number 11 is an F. That makes 10 the note E. If you're having trouble counting backwards through the alphabet, start on C. 8 is C, so C, D, E. So number 10 is E. So save that answer, go on to the next one. Do one more. Identify key number 13. Key number 13, it's right in between these two black keys. I know this is F, F, G, A. So 13 is A. So that is music theory drill number 1. Let's go on, oops, textbook. Let's go on to music theory drill number 2. So you'll notice for Unit 2 you have a few more questions. So here, we're going to do note identification. So let's go ahead and start. You're going to be given notes in both the treble and the bass clef. So here's your note. You have to identify the note illustrated. So I know that the lines and the spaces in the treble clef have different note names. The spaces in the treble clef are F, A, C, and E. So this must be the note E. So all I do is I type in a single letter and I save my answer. Don't put anything else in there except for a single letter. So here I'm in the bass clef. It's important to look at the clef. If you don't look at the clef, you might think you just got the same note again. You didn't. You got first in the treble clef, now you're in the bass clef. So if you remember, all cows eat grass, or whatever other mnemonic you want to use, we know that that is a G. And remember, you can also count from line to space. So if I know the bottom line in the bass clef is G, I can just count up until I find out what note I'm dealing with. So G, A, B, C on the second space, D, E on the third space, F on the fourth line, and G. So that's how you figure out your notes. Very simple, very slow, but it gets the job done. All right, so let's look at Music Theory Drill 2.2, octave registers. And remember, octave registers are when you are giving the range of a pitch. So you've got to identify not the note name, you have to identify the octave register. Now, if you look at the instructions, you get a little more information on this one because this is a little bit harder. So for each question, enter the numerical value that identifies the octave register for each note. For example, middle C falls in the fourth octave register. So since middle C, the note that occurs right below the staff, is in the fourth octave register, we would put 4 if this were a middle C, but it's not. So what you have to do is, you know this is C4, this is higher than C4. So you need to find out if this is in the fourth octave register or if it's in an octave register that's higher. So what I do is I start on my C4 and I count all the way up to my next C. Since this C is an octave higher than C4, it's now C5. And I have to determine, is this note, F, in between C5 and C6, which would be somewhere up here above the staff? The answer is yes. So the answer here is 5. All you do is write in the number 5. So let's do another one. Here is our C4. Remember, it's the C directly between the treble and the bass clef. So the answer for this one is 4. Here, you have an E below the staff, the treble clef staff anyway. It's in the staff for the bass clef. So if I know that C4 in the bass clef is also in between where, if you had a grand staff, the treble, and the bass, then this first ledger line right here would be C. So I go down an octave. So C3 would be right here. So this note is in between C3 and our imaginary C4 up here. So that means this is 3. I heard a rumbling, it was my cat. All right, that's where the delay came from. So here's one more. You need to identify the octave register for this one. C4 is right here. The next octave up is C5. This is in between C5 and C6, which is actually one ledger line above. So this is also octave register 5. So the important thing that you need to remember, and I believe it's in the instructions, the octave register always starts on C. It's not A. Even though A is the first note of our alphabet, in music, octave registers begin on C, not A. So it's C4, and then the note right below it would not be B4, it would be B3, because anything below C4 is going to be the next octave down until we get to the next octave below C4, which is C3, and then everything below that is C2. So just remember, octave registers start on C and not A. Otherwise, you'll get a few of these wrong. Let's go back to our assignments, Unit 2 drills and quiz. Here you have your church modes. This is a really easy one. For this, you just have to identify the modern church mode that's listed. And what you'll see is it's written out. It's not using any stems, and it's just using black notes. So this scale starts on B. There's no tricks here. You don't need to check each note in the scale. You really just need to look at the first note. So I know that Locrian starts on B. That means my answer is Locrian. So let's do one more. This one starts on G. What mode starts on G? Remember the modern modes. I know that that's Mixolydian. So there's my answer. So the church modes one is very simple. Let's move on to the next one. We're already in Unit 3. Real simple. Performance indicators. This is really self-explanatory. I'm not going to go over this very much. You just need to match the performance indicator with the correct term. So here, you just have to identify the performance indicator. Now remember, all the drills rotate through a collection of questions, so you're never going to get the same exact questions twice. So you just have to identify what type of symbol you see and select the correct answer. All right, let's go to drill 3.2. This one is going to give students, many of you, problems. So you need to know the note values for each of the notes that we're dealing with in class. You need to know that a quarter note is worth 1 beat, a half note is worth 2, a whole note is worth 4, and you need to know that the equivalent rests are also worth the same value. So what you do, it goes all the way down to 16th notes, you have to count the total number of beats in a particular piece. So here, what this is doing is it's asking you to label the third 16th note in the first measure. So what I do is I find the third 16th note. 1, 2, 3. What I was actually explaining a few minutes earlier is actually another drill. So the third 16th note, right here. I know that we count 16th notes as 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a. Remember, 16th notes have to use the letter E and a. Okay? So that means if I have to label the third 16th note in the first measure, I have to select the correct symbol for that. So it's 2 E and. And remember, we don't use the word and, we use a plus sign that's pronounced and. So this one would be the symbol plus, which is pronounced and. So the last 16th note in the first measure. This is the last note in the measure, but it's not the last 16th note, so don't get confused by that. The last 16th note is right here. So again, we got to go 1 E and a, 2 E and a. So this is the letter A, because we use the letter A to represent the sound a. Okay, so this is what I was talking about when we first started this drill. So there are two types of questions in the rhythm counting and equations drill. For this type of question, this is the second type, you just have to count up the total number of beats and rests and come to a total value. So I know my quarter notes and my quarter rests are each worth 1 beat. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's another one, that's 5. So I've got 5 beats so far. So then I have to count up my half rests, which are worth 2. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 plus 5 equals 9. So now I'm going to go ahead and count all my whole notes. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, plus 9 brings us up to 17. So now this guy here is sitting above the bar line, which means it's a little bit lighter. So that's a half rest, because a half rest, remember, it goes above the bar line. So that's another 2 beats. So 17 plus 2 is 19. So now I believe the only thing left is we have to count the 3 beats here. Because remember, a dot added to a note increases the value by half. So you add that to your previous number, you add all these up, and then you just enter in a single numerical value here. Let's say it's 21, 22. When you're doing these exercises, it's a good idea to have a little piece of paper. Maybe write the rhythm out and actually write in the numbers for each note. So you'd go 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 4 plus 3 plus 1, plus 4, plus 2. So let's do another one here. So here it's the same thing. You just write down all the note values, their numerical equivalents, and you add them all up. So 1 plus 1. This is going above the bar line, so we know it's lighter, so it's a half rest. So 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. Add all those together, and that's your answer. All right, so let's move on to, I believe there's one more drill here. Classifying meter. You have to identify whether or not you are seeing a simple, compound, or complex meter. And I'm not explaining these concepts because they're already explained in the unit lectures, and then the lectures on YouTube, and then this information's in the textbook as well. So here you just have to classify the time signature. And these are really easy. Remember, a simple time signature has a 2, 3, or 4 on the top. A compound has a 6, a 9, or a 12. Complex is anything else. Might even say that in the instructions. No, it does not. So this does not have a 2, 3, 4, 6, 9, or 12. That makes it complex because it's not simple or compound. This is a 3. So remember, anything with a 3 on top is simple. This is a 2. 2, 3, 4 is simple. So check your textbook. That information is listed in there. It tells you exactly how to identify these time signatures. If you're having any trouble, you just have to read the textbook. All right, so let's go on to Unit 4. And we're almost done. Unit 4 is where you have to identify scales and key signatures. So for the scales, pretty easy. All of your scales are listed in your textbook. So this is really just matching at this point. You have to compare the scale you see with the scale in the textbook to find out what it is. And this is going to test your ability to identify all 4 of our most common scales in music. It could be major, natural minor, harmonic minor, or melodic minor. So very quickly, remember a major scale uses a major key signature. A natural minor scale uses a natural minor key signature, or just a minor key signature because there is no natural minor key signature. Or you can think of it as a major scale with a lowered 3rd, 6th, and 7th scale degree. The harmonic minor is a major scale with a lowered 3rd and then a 6th scale degree. So the 7th scale degree keeps its major sharp or flat or natural, whatever it may happen to be for the major. The melodic minor, on the way up, you've got a hybrid of major and natural minor. On the way down, it's all natural minor. So I explained that in the Unit 4 lecture. It's a long lecture, but I really go into detail, so I'm not going to do that here. You just have to identify the scale that you see. Let me make sure this is, yeah, all you have to do, this is multiple choice, very simple. Just select the proper answer. So I believe we have one more drill in Unit 4. You have to identify the key signatures. So this one's an important one because I believe you have to use the correct syntax, otherwise the system will mark it wrong. Part of this is following instructions. So if you don't follow the instructions, even if you get the answer right, it's not good enough. You need to follow the instructions. All right, so here you got to identify the minor key signature. So what you have to do when you enter in a key, and I'm not going to tell you the answer, I'm just going to show you the correct formatting. You enter in an uppercase letter for the name of the key, and then if it's a flat, you write a lowercase b. So if this was A flat minor, you'd write a lowercase b. If this was a sharp minor, you'd use a number sign, the pound sign. If it was just A minor, you just write an A. If you have any questions about that, it tells you right here. So see, if you have the key of C sharp major, you just type C and the pound sign. So use a lowercase b for flats and a pound sign for any sharp key. And again, if there is no sharp or flat quantifier, then you just write an A or a B or a C. So that's all you have to do for that. Make sure you use the right capitalization on those. So take your time on this. Make sure you get them all right. There's only 10 of them. Shouldn't kill you. All right, Unit 5, our last unit. Major scale intervals. Probably the easiest unit next to identifying note names, because all you're doing here is using this chart, which you're going to see, and identifying what interval you're looking at. And it's multiple choice. So as long as you can count to 7 or 8, as the case may be, you should be able to get this right. So here, these notes are a third apart. Well, lucky for you, these are major scale intervals that we're testing right now. So you look at the third scale degree, it's a major third. Uppercase M means major. Remember, lowercase m means minor. Well, there isn't even an option for a minor third, so you cannot get this wrong if you can count to 3. So 1, 2, 3. That's the third note. So this has to be a major third. Very simple. Here, you got to count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is a 6, which makes it a major 6. Now, while this may seem extremely easy, and it is, the goal is to get you to learn how to identify very quickly these intervals on the staff. So you should be able to look at this and instantly know that when you have that kind of spacing, it's a 6. Let's go on to another one. When you have this kind of spacing where there's a bottom note and a top note, and it either skips a space, or if the bottom note was on a line, it'd skip a line, you should know that that is what a perfect fifth looks like just by looking at it. See here, it skips a line and goes to the next line. That is what a fifth will always look like. It'll always have one line or space, depending on where it starts, that it skips. The seventh is always going to skip 2 lines or 2 spaces. The octave is always going to be the same note. So the goal here is not so much to test your ability to identify and calculate specific chromatic intervals. That's a more advanced concept. It's something that really only music majors need to do. This is a survey course, so all I care about is that you understand the concept of generic intervals, and by selecting the right answer, hopefully somewhere in your subconscious you're starting to identify the concept that all the intervals in a major scale are major. So a first, a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, and an eighth. Now, of course, perfect fourth and fifth we call perfect, and we don't call them major, but in essence, they have the same quality as major intervals. They fit the overtone series pretty nicely. All right, and that's why they're perfect. But you already know that because you studied the chapter on overtones. So let's go on to drill 5.2. This just shows you that natural minor scales, just because you're using a natural minor scale, it doesn't mean all the intervals in a natural minor scale are going to be minor. In fact, very few of them are. And I'm going to show you once it pops up. So this assignment should be very, very simple for you to complete. So here you'll notice that unlike the major scale, the natural minor scale doesn't consist only of minor intervals. In fact, the only minor intervals in the natural minor scale are, surprise, the third, the sixth, and the seventh scale degree. the 3 scale degrees that are changed from the major scale. All the rest, the perfect fourth and perfect fifth, you can think of those as major, but never call them major. They're not major, they're perfect. The perfect octave and the perfect unison, as well as the major second. Those are what could be considered your major intervals. So again, you just do the same thing. You count the distance between the 2 notes, and you identify the interval that way. So here, I've got an F sharp and a G sharp, F sharp to G sharp, it's a second, because you go 1, 2. So then all you have to do is select major second, and you're done. Very simple. So that's all the music theory drills. The quizzes, they are open book, so I'm not going to go over those questions because that just makes this a little bit too easy. Just take your time, find the correct answers, and do your best. And keep in mind that when you take your final, you take any of your drills, you're never going to have, it'll be very unlikely that you'll have the same exact assignment as any other student. This pulls from a pool of thousands of questions for the entire course. And yes, I created every one of these questions and I've checked every single one of them. But if you do see a question that you are convinced you got right and it marked it as wrong, there's a possibility that there's 1 or 2 questions out there that I missed. Feel free to contact your instructor. They'll get in touch with me. They'll correct your grade if necessary. So it's always a good idea to look over your answers to make sure that everything was graded properly. If you have any questions, just go ahead and contact your instructor. Remember, you can go to the schedule to find out who your instructor actually is. And good luck. I hope you do really well in this course, and I hope you enjoy it.